Alright, so this will be the last video for this week. I just finished covering the WebGL user script. And I just wanted to cover user interfaces. I'm not going to cover this camera script yet because it gets into some ideas that are going to get a little bit more complicated, but they're definitely approachable. This deals with like multi-threading, basically sending out separate update loops for purposes of animation or different timing. But I don't feel like covering it this week, and I've covered a lot. I don't want to overwhelm you. Also, we have to cover ideas of enumeration. These are the different stages of the experience. And that really should come from another part of all these scripts first. So I will not cover this script this week, but I will cover the ideas of user interfaces. And so that, yeah, especially if you're making your own project, the user interfaces are such a big, vital part of any type of interactive application. So you need to be aware of them. So UI here, game object UI. You can see that we have text elements, image elements, buttons, toggles, sliders, drop downs. The canvas, the panel, and the event system are what I'm going to cover. Those are the major parts, but you do see that there's other stuff in here. So when you create a canvas, I think maybe I'm just going to do a new scene. Just to start from the beginning. So UI canvas is really where you start off. And this is the root object of the interface. And notice how the event system gets created and comes along for the ride. So the event system and the Unity user interface system greatly simplify a lot of things that would be for a very complicated coding situation. So these are here for your advantage. But underneath the canvas, we can place some object, say a text object. Now, if you notice, it's very small in the left-hand corner. Canvases can be placed on screen space. If you remember, that's where the mouse lives. Or they can be placed in world space. And screen space overlay is the more regular one. It just means it's going to overlay over the main camera. And there's a secondary feature one down here. But by default, we're in screen space overlay. Means just place it over the camera. And if I move out, notice how here there's this really, really big rectangle and the text is right there. So UI is interesting, and let me just create a 3D object like a cube, and let me just reset its position to world space 0, 0, 0. And notice that the cube is like really small, or it's actually the size of 1 meter. And this is like the world that you work within when you make an interactive experience. And notice as I keep zooming out, the UI is really big and off to the side. And in screen space, it does that because it wants to be moved off to the side, doesn't want to interfere with you building the world. And it's just meant to be rendered to the camera. There's like no physics involved in it. It doesn't interact with any object you're seeing. So it's really big and off to the side. But optionally, you can also put it in the world space and scale it down and actually place it around your objects. But for now, I'm just going to do screen space overlay. And then this is what it's like in the scene. So I'm going to take this text object. And notice the big thing is we don't have transforms anymore. We have rect transform, or rectangle transforms. 2D spaces within the user interface, not 3D transforms dealing with 3D space. And that's because UIs stretch and scale and morph, and every type of desktop or laptop monitor has a different pixel ratio and has a different resolution, width to height. And when you get into the mobile space, tablets and phones, they're all over the place. That's the resolution size. So UIs are very hard to deal with as far as all these dealing with all these scenes. So a lot of this stuff's built in to try and be all sketchy and or stretchy and morphy, so that you can deal with all these devices with these different resolutions. Anyway, see this position X negative, position Y negative. That's right in the bottom left. I'm just going to zero it out, put it in the center, and I'm going to scale up the size of the font to say 30. Now notice it disappeared. So that's because the text is now bigger than the text box. So it's an annoying thing to think about, but if you start scaling it up, or your text is getting cut off, say if I copy new text 3 times over, this is the text box here that, notice what I write here, it gets copied to the screen. Notice I wrote new text 3 times, but it only shows twice. Or if I scale it up, the font size, it starts to disappear. And that's because it's going longer than the width or taller than the height. So you have to play with your width and height size as you decide how big your text is going to be. So you play with this, the amount of text, and the width and height. You also have alignment, center, vertically and horizontally if you need to, and wrap choices, what have you. So look at all these options, right? And it's a text component on just an object called text. But this is a text component when we start grabbing stuff with the code that you're going to be aware of. And so some other stuff is you can bring in an image if you want, but normally I'll bring in a panel. Notice the order of the objects, it depends how they get rendered. So it goes from top to bottom within the canvas of like layers of ordering of the 2D graphics. So I'll just make a little image that's red to like kind of show you what's happening here. Panel just fills up the whole background. Usually that's useful. Sometimes you want it to be semi-transparent. Here's the color wheel. That's the alpha. So remember, I think I went over colors. I definitely did in the first week, so I don't really have to go through how the color wheel works. But if you want a fully opaqueness, panel, you just got to bring up that alpha. But notice that this image is being rendered on top of the text. If I bring the image up in the hierarchy, it's rendered behind the text. So the panel should be rendered in the background, the image next, and the text. So from top to bottom. So image, you can drag in little images that you find on the internet. I think we went over that, but I'm just using color. Here's the text. Oh, and you know what? I did go over, didn't I? Yep, I did go over buttons and in the first, yeah. So we got buttons, toggle, slider, drop down. All right, I'm gonna click play. Notice a button, it's clickable. This is what it looks like when it's clicked. A toggle can be true or false, on or off. And a slider can move in a continuous way, representing float numbers or integers. And an enumeration, or a drop down, usually is representing an enumeration, a list, or an integer. There's a discrete number of choices. With these, you pretty much can represent anything. All of these, with the event system, make it super easy to connect to other code. So, the button has an image component, a button component, the button component on click. Because the event system, I don't need to hard code all this stuff. I just say I want to add something. And it says, what's the method you want to call when someone clicks this button? And I'll just create a quick script, UI elements. And I'm just going to drag it onto this canvas. And I'm going to create, I don't need all this stuff, but I'm going to say I'm a public method. So public void, a method that doesn't return anything. Button clicked, meaning that I named it. It just happens to be that easy for me to understand. It's meant for the button that is on the UI. So parentheses, that makes it a method. They're empty. We're not going to pass anything in. Now I tab this too far out. We move it back. And when the button is clicked, maybe the panel turns on and off. Okay, so to grab a part of the UI, we need to use another library, Unity engine.ui. And I need to grab a panel, the panel I just showed you, turning colors on and off. But you need to know what it is. So if I say public, it's going to be a public variable of type panel. Is it called panel? Is that canvas? Not canvas. Be sure they're panels. Yeah, panel. Oh, panel is an image. Okay. So I clicked on panel. I thought maybe there'd be a panel class here. It's an image. So my fault. Public image. This will be the panel image. So it's a descriptive name. I know what I need to connect to. So if we click the button, we can actually the toggle should be turning off. So the button, let's see, a button click is like it just calls a method. It's not passing in a bool. It's not passing in a float, an integer, what have you. It's just executing something. So you can turn the panel. Let's just, I mean, I could turn it red, but it just happened once. So, oh, whatever. It'll just be a one-time thing. When you click the button, it just turns the panel red. Whatever. So, panel image dot color equals, and when you want to designate a new type of color, you could say new. Actually, there's a few preset colors. So you can say color dot, and notice that we have some presets: black, blue, clear, cyan, gray, green, and red. So I want to turn it red. All right. So I'm going to save it and jump back out. And notice UI elements. It's saying panel image. What is the panel image? There's currently nothing. Well, this is the panel image. So I'm going to drag it onto here. This is the panel image, this big white grayish thing. All right. When we click the button, I want to take the panel image, get its variable of type color, set it to red. So panel, here's the panel image, here's color. Currently it's white. I want to set it to red. So now we have to say the button click. When the button is clicked, what method should it call? What object, what game object does this method rest on? Rests on the canvas here. In the canvas, I have a object from class UI elements. And within it, I have a method called button clicked. There it is. Button clicked. It's a method passing in nothing. Perfect. Click play. Click the button. Red. If I keep clicking it, it's actually keep calling this method, but it keeps updating it as red. But good. That shows a button click. Actually, I'm going to save this just in case it crashes. And I'm going to call it UI experiment. So technically U and I should be capital, but When you say UI experiment and you and I are both capital, it kind of makes it hard to read in the camel case. So usually when you have these uppercase situations, you'll lowercase the rest of the name UI like that. All right, that's a button click. Now the toggle, I'm going to want to turn the panel on and off. So toggle sends a bool. All right, public bool toggle panel visible. All right, we're going to pass in the bool from the toggle. We're going to say it's our new state, our new panel state, new panel visibility. All right. So, sorry, public void. It's not sending out a bool. It's receiving a bool, and it's not sending out anything. So we already know about the panel. So whatever the bool is, we're going to take panel image dot enabled. Is enabled what I want? Enables the behavior on and off. Perfect. So enabled, it's a method, and we're going to pass in new panel visibility. Let's see. Oh, it's not. Okay. Sorry, I think it's a property. Yeah. So it's when you see a get and set, it means it's a variable that's called a property. In it, you basically say it's a public variable that you can set it yourself. So I'm setting the image to be enabled or not based on this bool. When this bool is false, it'll turn the image off. When the bool is true, it'll turn it on. So now you see we have more input than just this method has nothing coming in. At least now we have some choices. We have a bool. Oops, wrong unity. So toggle, it needs to do something when it's toggled. Well, you can call the method UI elements that's on the canvas object. Now be very careful now. Static parameters, dynamic bool, right? So static will always send the same thing no matter what you're clicking. You don't want that. You want dynamic. So based on if the toggle is on, it'll send an updated bool. If it's off, it'll send a different type of bool. True, false. I want that one. Toggle panel visible. That was the name of my method. And it should send true, false. Yep, turns it on and off. All right, the slider sends a float, which is actually perfect to update how much red do you want the panel to be. Let's see, public void, or how much blue, let's say. Our set, usually you saw like set panel blue, set amount, set, I'm trying to think of a good word. Set amount, set blue amount, set panel blue amount. That's good. It's going to receive a float, new blue amount, and we're still going to mess with the panel image. It's going to be whatever the current image is. So it's going to be a new color, very similar to like a new vector. So a new is a way to, it's like a constructor of making a new object. Some classes are very more complicated, and you have to say new. You just learn which ones are like this. So we're saying we're going to create a new object of type color and pass it into the color of our panel image. So new color, RGB. So we're going to take panel image dot color and just one channel of the color, R, because colors like vectors are just a series of floats, RGBA, 4 floats. Now, here's the amount of blue. So RG, sorry, no, G first. panel image.color.g. So we're going to pass in whatever our current RNG is. Same thing, doesn't change. Now, new blue amount comes in here, and we're going to keep the same alpha. Okay. So, slider. Now we have to be careful here. Slider, the colors range from 0 to 1, and in this case there is no blue in it. So actually defaulting to 0, the left side, and we want to be able to go as far left as 0 and to the far right as 1. And it's not a whole number, it's a decimal, and we're starting at 0. Notice as I move this, the starting value. But we start with no blue. So that's right. Let's add a method call. Dynamic. Float. There's only one method. Perfect. Has to be dynamic. It's going to update with the float value. So save it and set it. So whatever the current value is light gray. We're going to add blue. Yellow. Something's not right. So it looks like when it's sending a 1, we're getting back to our blue state. And when I bring it down to 0, we're getting a yellow. So something's not right. Let's take a look here. RGB 0 to 1. Blue is at 0. Red, green's at 1. Blue is at, oh, it is moving the blue, but it's setting these, clamping them at 1 for some reason. So whatever panel image color of red, green, and new blue. So panel image starts at 1, 1. Oh, blue is 1. So it's like to me it looks like a little bit of a gray, which would be off of a 1, 1, 1. But okay, so we start at 1, 1, 1. Let me just do some fixes. Let me say slider should be defaulting to 1. Blue should be fully on to start with. 0, 1, 1. And it's RBG. Oh, RGB. No, RBG. Okay, I have the numbers flipped around. The colors flipped around, I should say. Let me click on the colors to make sure. It's RGB. Hey, oh, isn't that what I had? RGB. Hey, no, it should be right. Let me click play, see what happens. So now I have the blues starting at 1. If I pull it down, okay. Right. So 1, 1, 1, 1. As I pull it down, we have 1, 1, 0, 1. All right. So when I pull it down, let's turn it to red. This actually is just if I started from black, it would turn it to blue. But I started from white, and so when I pull blue out, it turns to yellow. Whatever. So if I click the button and I make it red, and then I can ramp up the blue. And so now we have red and blue, no green. So we make it a purple, and I can pull it back to the red. Now, I'm just going to show you that would actually, if I left the toggle here and turned it red, I'd actually start to get a mismatch because when it's white, we get 1, 1, 1, 1. But when I set it to red, the panel is 1, 0, 0, 1, but my slider is still set at what would be blue of 1, right? So watch it if I just move it just a little bit and come back, like blue is way up here. So what happened is that we switched the color from like a white to a red, or 111 to a 100, but this is supposed to represent the blue channel, the third, which starts as a 1 but goes to a 0 and it turns red. But the slider doesn't get updated. So I should know about the slider. This is the blue slider. And if we do click the button and make everything red, then we should set the slider value to 0, meaning no blue. So let's see if that works. So the slider that represents blue, when we're in white, or 111, we pull down from white to yellow. We pull the blue out. The blue goes from 1 to 0, but we still have red and green, so we get yellow. And if I leave the slider back up here, I'm going to click the button to make everything red. Notice that, oh, I got a no reference exception. I forgot to say what the blue slider is on this script. It doesn't know what the blue slider is, so I just generated no reference because I tried to reference it. So notice here, blue slider, none. It's not good. So when I'm talking about the blue slider, I'm referencing this slider. All right, let me save. Let's try it again. So slider's good. Click button. Notice how the slider pops to the left. Because I set the value of the slider to 0 because the slider represents blue, or the blue value of the panel color, which when it gets set to red, the blue is at 0. So I had to go and connect back to the UI, and now when I ramp it up, it feels correct. It goes from 0 to 1, or turning it into a purple. All right, and since we don't cover enumerations yet, I'm not going to do the drop down. But a drop down sends an integer, so it'd be like 0, 1, 2, but it's used a lot in enumerations, which we'll get to later. So this is enough for today. I'm going to pop this video in. So now we input it in the project. Here's the Unity package. Here's more Unity tutorials. My previous video just finished uploading to YouTube, which got heavy into the code of the WebGL user. And this one was heavy with just talking about the UI elements and connecting them to your methods, which will be another video up here. And then here's some readings, and then we'll move on. And this week will just be heavy with the coding for the bubble sort level to get the second prototype to some level of completion. So we went through, we created the learning objectives. Last week, I had you read a lot about interaction design. And I want you, now you start to understand how to start generating your code. You're starting to understand how to start creating user interfaces to connect to your method calls so that the user can connect to your code and change stuff. And you can start through the user interface thinking about your interaction designs. How is the user going to interact with your experience through changing method calls so that the experience moves forward? It does stuff. You make stuff appear, change colors, you change your graphics to represent the ideas, you change the text on the UI as the user is moving through the experience.